So yes, Nick Goodrum, been working here at American Eagle for about 10 years. And really the goal of this presentation is about really the two hats that I wear, right? So accessibility and front-end development. And so developers, you know, there's all kinds of issues that we can do, that we create, that impact end users. Really at the company, we used to be more reactive and kind of, oh, if you want to take care of accessibility, we'll do it. We switched to being much more proactive because really every website is important. Every website has potential of creating barriers for people with disabilities that just want to enjoy everyday life.
Nick, I'm sorry, I don't think your screen is shared.
Oh.
Yeah, if you could double check that.
Oh, sorry about that. Well, easy enough.
No
I
worries.
change slides anyway. So
there we go. There we go.
Technology, right? Fun with all the Zoom calls that we're doing. So yes, this is more aimed towards developers, but it's actually really everyone as a whole. So site owners, site managers. What it is, you know, I've been assessing and looking at code for a long time, and I kept going, you know, why are there issues? Why are there still problems? You know, why are we still, you know, having difficulties creating good end user experiences? And so a lot of times it's probably, you know, not with bad intentions, it's usually with good intentions, but as developers, we don't really know any better. So where to start? So we got a nice image of kind of that golden compass pointing north on a nice wooden table there, nice dark wooden table. So we can grab our compasses and let's dive in. Let's actually kind of take a look into the WordPress space and how we can navigate accessibility in it. So the WordPress starting lineup, that's really where you want to start. This is really aimed towards more beginners, people that have been doing this for a long time. You're probably well aware of this, but really there's two areas you want to be aware of when you start working inside of WordPress. So one, you've got WordPress alone in the themes area, you've got over about close to 4,000 themes. But really you want to take a look for the ones that are accessibility ready. Because really we only have about 107. And then of course the accessibility handbook. So let's take a look. Accessibility ready themes. Multiple people probably brought it up so far. And so if you've been a marathon runner through this whole entire, you know, almost now 24 hours of, you know, presentations, you probably heard this. But it's important to be aware that these take time to audit and review. Joe and the team have been working through these, trying to get as many as possible, but it takes time because we want to do due diligence. And it should also be noted that, of course, until it's kind of almost, you know, themes are in a sense almost kind of like hanging clothes, right? You won't know if it's actually truly the right fit and the right kind of accessibility until after you actually put in yourself, right? And put in the content. And if you're aiming to make a theme, these slides are available, so there's links throughout the whole entire area. Feel free to go and you can reference them and jump to them. You know, there's also patterns, right? You know, helpful tools if you're starting to actually make these things. So the handbook. So picture here, of course, is going over all the chapters that's inside of it, right? You've got best practices, development best practices, content best practices, tools, all kinds of items. So you have to ask yourself, you know, as a developer, as a site owner, you know, do I understand what WCAG is? Do I understand what the core methods, the things you're looking for, perceivable aspects like that? Hey, there's a quick little reference guide for that. Unsure about what why ARIA guidelines are or what the HTML semantics for roles? Well, hey, starting point right here too. You know, do you need to be able to send announcements? How do you do that? You know, it covers even, you know, code of WP, you know, ally.speak, code bases that, you know, can help guide you on how to fill these things out. And then of course, just tools, right? Build tools. How do I put this into my CLI? You know, how do I do it into build tools? All kinds of aspects. So when we're talking about WordPress and navigating it, we should also be able to know a map of where the current state is. And so we're going to look into, you know, what aspects of WordPress are needing to be talked about. So we, of course, are going to navigate it kind of like navigating this person with their finger going over, I think it's the downtown Los Angeles. So I'm going to talk, of course, about page editors. And so some of you might be groaning. Some of you might know what we're going to talk about. I know it's created a little bit of divisiveness, but Gutenberg. So Gutenberg is moving forward. Automatic and the accessibility team have been working for actually multiple years now, trying to improve and better create a usable experience. The end goals, I can see the benefits, right? Trying to create an ecosystem where you can create blocks, move things around, have a page editor, kind of like Wix and aspects like that. That, you know, if you think about it, WordPress for the beginning was just kind of a blogging platform, and now it's used to create all kinds of websites. But execution is key, right? So, of course, needed to have an audit, needed to have part of the practices. So Tenon.io did the review, WP Campus. I'm not going to rehash the whole entire history, but it's a good sign that, you know, we've gotten through 2/3 of the issues. Now, of course, UI's change, there's going to be regression issues. It's an ongoing aspect. But Joe Dawson, everyone has been trying to really resolve this. Now, there's still problems, right? So that's why Classic Editor is probably one of the most popular plugins. And it's because, yeah, things like video captions, you still need it. Now, the Classic Editor plugin should be noted that right now it's supported only really through the 2021, through the end of 2021. Now that might change, right? Because this is really about Gutenberg should be in a stable state, should be accessible, should be accounting for all these things by that time. So it gets a lot of flack, but, you know, actually, what about other page builders, right? Well, why don't we use the other ones instead of Gutenberg? Well, unfortunately, the alternatives have pain points as well. This is no means trying to bash on these particular ones. I'm not, you know, Beaver Builder, Divi, Elementor, they're, you know, they have some good aspects to it, but really, you know, they're most commonly used. They're high up there, and they also have similar issues. So A-Tag, you know, really about being able to easily traverse so people with disabilities can create content. They have problems with this as well. Beaver Builder is trying to improve, you know, but it takes time, and it's been years. And so, you know, it's nice that there's a change of pace and really focusing on it, but they still have problems. Then, of course, Divi, other people have even built plugins to fix some of the front end issues of what's being created. But Campus Press built that, and it still has problems too, right? Because there's a lot of work involved if you start with, you know, sometimes not the right basis. And then Elementor, you know, they're also advocating about accessibility, but it also has some work to do. So you can even take a look. You've got GitHub aspects that are pointing out multiple issues. And it's because, yeah, it's not one and done, and there's always room for improvement. Okay, so Nick, you're not really making it sound amazing. Maybe there's plugins. Maybe there's something to fix that. But really, all page builder tools, all plugins, they all still need work. So we've got a nice background here of road in Japan, pretty much in front of a Family Mart. I miss convenience food from Japan. And pretty much people digging up and doing maintenance, right? Because it still needs work. So I'll mention plugins. Okay, this is probably a better state, right? So if we've got page builders creating front-end code that's having issues, maybe there's some one magic button that fixes everything. And so really, I see people submitting and people talking about it. Accessibility overlays. This has kind of become a popular thing more recently. And so I ask yourselves, what are your expectations for this overlay? What are your expectations in putting these plugins on your site? Because really accessibility should not be an afterthought. So if it's, hey, as developers, we're just going to just plow ahead, keep making code, and then, okay, well, I'll just throw in a tool at the end that's supposed to fix everything. Well, they kind of don't really fix everything. If you really look at it, there's so much inside the spec that an automated tool fixing everything is not really possible. Then you might say, okay, well, it's also progressive enhancement, helping out people that might need a grayscale or high contrast or you know, some negative contrast, some options, right? Underlines. Now again, if you're making a good website, the link should already be recognizable. So why add the link underline aspect? Increase font, decrease font, if you've actually done a pretty decent job, but it should also already be quite large in fonts. The design era of like 2000s with 9-point font aren't really there anymore. But think about it this way. So if someone with a disability needs to have high contrast or needs to have a certain font size, those kinds of things, they're probably already going to have some tool, some plugin, some software installed on their machine so that they can do this for every website, not just your website. So some of these tools end up being a little bit redundant. Now, it's not that you really shouldn't use it at all and there's no value. There could be some people that still somehow get benefit from it. So that's where I kind of go, what are your expectations? And there's also some within the WordPress space that like the WP accessibility one from Joe Delson. Yeah, it has a little bit of overlays, but it's also got snuck in some good aspects, right? Making sure title tags or attributes are kind of removed if they're not really needed, making sure skip navigation is inserted for you. So they're putting stuff inside the PHP space to actually make it a little bit better. So the idea though is, what is the goal? If it's for a quick fix, there's many voices out there in the community really expressing that that's really not the best approach. You've got Steve Faulkner, you've got even this article here from Lainey Feingold, really going into how all of the issues that are still around. And there are still some legal battles for sites that have these kinds of overlay tools. So are there good ones? Yes, there are good plugins out there. Now, is this a huge list? No. And is it exhaustive? No as well. But yes, like I said, WP accessibility plugin, that's a good starting point. Contact Form 7, it's actually not that bad of a starting point for accessibility, but some of the defaults may sometimes need some help. And so that's why there's a tool for that. Gravity Forms has some issues. So, hey, we're going to patch that and fix that. Of course, there's accessible Twitter feeds. This is also a lot of stuff that's also in the handbook as well. So if you want to know some good starting points, here it is. Video players, there's also Able Player as a plugin. Able Player is a really nice one that really gives a lot of options for different kinds of disabilities. Now, of course, you have to make sure your content is also available that way. So I didn't list a lot of options here, and I've so far kind of pointed out everything has some problems. So really, that's why it's all on us as developers, site owners, site managers. It's on us to make sure we do our due diligence. We can't wait until QC comes in. We can't wait until the end user has to complain or try and access the content. So we've got nice cartography tools on a workbench going over maps. And really, we're going to use those cartography tools. There's the tools for ourselves of how are we going to test our sites. So test, and vet. Now you might be thinking, I don't know how to test or vet. Well, at the very least, you can still do your part and look into the history. Okay, let's go into the GitHub. As devs, we probably don't feel too concerned in just jumping in and looking at the issue trackers. Even kind of showed here, right? We have Elementors. Well, it's, again, no dig at them, but there's still 21 issues still open. Still issues with maybe some keyboard accessibility. Now there's 64 closed, which is great. Now, for some plugins, some tools that might not get enough traction to have a lot of people diving into the accessibility. So it's also important to check, is there even any statement at all? So if it's silence about accessibility, that's probably a bad sign that they probably aren't thinking about it. So, even Beaver Builder, for example, has statements about it, trying to work towards it, right? And then, of course, search for reviews. Maybe you're still kind of unsure. There's a lot of specialists. There's a lot of people, all the presenters today. I mean, there's plenty of people that are trying to help educate and grow knowledge on maybe some pain points or in some growth areas. So, you even have, oh, I didn't actually have that one open. But you have like a Bright Clear Web. You've got multiple places that are actually testing out, sometimes even end users that are saying, hey, I can't actually use this. But really, at the end of the day, it's about actually really testing the demos, testing the code, testing it on a sandbox, testing it yourself. Even Graham earlier, if you've been watching all these streams, is, you need to know how to tab, use a keyboard. Don't just assume it's a mouse. So we need to test, right? We need to test with different kinds of tools. So a lot of people go to automated tools, right? So we've got Totally, Wave, Axe, Arc Toolkit. These are extensions you can install into your browser to be able to say, okay, well, quick assessment. Then you got Pally. That's if you want to create dashboards for yourself and do it through, again, CLI build tools. Then you've got Tenon.io, Siteimprove, these types of, hey, they've already created a dashboard. They've already created a system that's crawling your site and looking through everything. And there's plenty more tools available and out there. But these are all great starting points. Now, everyone's throwing out different amounts, but in general, automated tools can only catch so much, maybe 25 to 50% of even the WCAG space. So really manual testing is key because really, how would you know if a multi-step checkout process with multiple tabs with an automated tool needs to fill out all the form fields, fill out some of them incorrectly, hit submit, find where the errors are, and make sure that they're properly timed? That's not that easy to achieve without a lot of customization with automated tools. Same thing, is there an automated tool to run through to confirm all your captions are well set up inside of your videos? No, it takes humans. That's why we even have humans writing closed captions. So I think one of the main things that I find with devs, why are there so many gaps? Why do I see ARIA hidden on a whole bunch of things that need to be read? Why are there these mistakes that are coming through? And it's because as humans, we have a hard time stepping out of our own shoes. We're used to our normal everyday life. Some people are, have site and do cater everything to site users. And so really it's about picking up these tools. The ones that I've kind of listed here, NVDA, Libserv, VoiceOver, TalkBack, all of them are actually, to a degree, free to use. NVDA, of course, would love donations. But so if you're on Windows and you need a screen reader, install it. Don't be afraid to just close your eyes and try and experience what it's like going through your website or just regular websites. And you'll see the extreme pain points that many sites provide. I mentioned Libsurf, so Dragon is another voice dictation software. Generally hasn't been that great for web traversal. And so Libsurf is kind of another alternative that's also free. It's an extension that's available for Chrome that also has some commands to be able to traverse everything. If you have a mobile device, pretty much almost I think everyone to a degree has. Now you could use VoiceOver, voice control through Mac OS and iOS. You got TalkBack and Voice Access on Android for the accessibility suite. So they're already built in. So you already have options. So go into your settings, turn them on, see what that experience is like. Because not everyone's going to be, your end users are not going to be pro screen reader users. There's going to be people that just, I need it to, get through the day. So I think that's one of the key things is, if I were to say, stress anything about today or anything, is pick up one of these software tools, and there's other assistive technology, of course, as well, and try it out. And that will kind of show you the pain points and of what you're building. So, because what I'm getting at is, as you saw, there's many plugins that and page tools that all have issues. There's even ones that are promoting accessibility that have problems. So us as developers, as site owners, as site managers, we're going to need to patch things. We're going to need to fix things. So you've got here a nice kind of beaten up road with potholes and definitely needs a paving, right? So DIY repairs are needed. So let's actually go into some of these, right? What could we do to improve this experience? So this is where we're going to get more Debbie side. So situations that I feel I often see in reviewing people's code and everything is that are missed. So we've got sticky headers, right? Everyone loves sticky headers. It's still kind of a focused interface really for sighted mouse users or touch users. But it's not that it's a bad practice per se. the problem is that there are people, we are all getting older, right? And eyesight, unfortunately, doesn't really last forever. And so people need to zoom, increase the screen size so that they can actually, or magnify, so they can actually read content. So let's take a look at an example, right? So let's actually change our zoom. So we're at 100%. And let's get up to 200%. And let's get up to 400%. And what is this experience for someone that needs to zoom in order to read content? Now, again, this is with navigation open, but the amount of space on a 1280 by 1024 screen, this is what's simulating here. When you zoom in at 400%, that's really not ending up that tall. You don't really have enough real estate space. It's actually shorter than most phones. So sticky here, where it's following you around, and then you have navigation, and that's open. How easily can I read contact? Okay, the experience is tough because now we have also a sticky pricing area. And again, this is not to, I see this on many, many sites. So this is not just something with Divi. So how do we account for that? So you can actually use media queries with min heights. Many people are aware of min widths, right? But you can actually do min heights. So you could do something along the lines of min height is 30 EM, right? So ems versus pixels to account for a little bit with different font choices and font sizes people might use within their browser. And so maybe if you're tall enough, then let's have the sticky. And otherwise, just have it be normal. Modal dialogues, that's very, 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 very common to do it wrong because it is very easy to do it wrong. It requires a lot about focus management, being able to say, as soon as I toggle something, I need to move into that area, then I need to be contained within that area, because the idea of a modal dialogue is that you need to complete this task before you move on to something else. That's why you often have, the grayed out areas of a page. But okay, let's try me. Okay, something popped up on the screen. Are you under 18? Okay, this is just a demo. And so I'll tab through and you can see that, at least know that tabbing through this, the content is actually, the user's focus is nowhere inside this area. So as a screen reader user, they may never even know that something even popped up. As a keyboard user, how do I even get to this information? So then, okay, well, I need to move focus inside, and then I need to be contained with inside, because a screen reader user might not know that they've left a dialogue, and now they've ended up in, there's hotkeys to jump all over the page. And so if they're outside of it, they don't know how to complete the task before coming back in. And then, of course, when you escape it, you should set focus back to where you were. So some promising aspects is there's a new attribute, a newer attribute, inert, which doesn't have perfect support yet. So if you mix that with aria hidden equals true and you apply that to pretty much everything behind your content modal, that pretty much contains everyone inside because screen reader users have really no other content to really interact with. Same thing with keyboards. And something to note in Safari for VoiceOver, there's bugs across all of these operating systems and browsers, right? So they actually have an issue where focus doesn't actually move inside if you actually have the modal display none, and then you show it. If it just pops in, that's a little bit different. So use visibility hidden if you were to actually hide this. And something, talking about Safari as well in iOS is that actually accessible names, you should have had an accessible name to your button in the first place, but I see so many times hamburger menus that pretty much have no name and just visuals, right? The 3 bars. And those pretty much are always skipped by VoiceOver because they would never even know it exists. You try and flick, you try and tap, anything, and nothing really happens. There's no way of interacting with it. Now, there's plenty of other issues, but at least screen readers and desktop might actually land on it, at least let you know that it's clickable, or if it's a link, that might actually just at least read the URL. So what are some more situations often missed? So we've got what I call divitis, concerns for anything interactive. You see it all the time. Pagination for carousels. You see buttons that look like a button, but really it's just a div. And I see developers all the time that go, okay, well, I'll throw the div, and then I'm going to put okay, well, screen readers don't know it's a button. Okay, role equals button. All right, but keyboard users can't access it because there's no tab index set. Okay, tab index equals 0. And then on top of that, they go, okay, well, that should fix everything because I have a click binding. But the click binding doesn't get called because the keyboards aren't tied to it anymore. So now you have to add in on enter, on spacebar to actually trigger your click events. Or is that even really worth it? You could have just created button type equals button. The same concerns happen with anchors with no H reference. They end up being kind of just like a div. So same concerns happen. So as developers, as site owners, if you're creating a button, or sorry, a link, and you have no real H reference, you're going like, I don't know where that would point to, you're probably wanting to create an actual button. And I do note type equals button because it's a little thing, but forms actually, if you hit enter inside of an input field, will actually trigger the first submit option. And that submit, the default state of a button is type equals submit. So it'll actually trigger that. So that's why most of the buttons that I see that toggle open, do something, type equals button is something you'd want to throw on there. And then carousels, slideshows, I see it all the time. It's automatic rotation, rotating through items, and there's even tools where it's okay, well, you set focus. When you set focus, pause it, or when you hover over it, pause it. And yeah, for digesting content, great. But about someone with maybe ADHD or someone that gets sick from motion, they have no way of turning it off, or I guess they just have to stare down a carousel for the rest of the time of being on that page. And that's not really enjoyable at all. So a pause button is absolutely necessary in order for it to be really accessible. Or really, don't even have automatic rotation. That would be great. So I'll also get into some maybe ARIA overlooked items. ARIA expanded is really the base of any toggle when you want to open and close it. Because, so a screen reader, to kind of give you an idea of what that experience is like. So sighted users, sites cater to you all the time. Let's say I click on a features or hover over a feature, and it shows something, right? Sites have been designed to account for sighted users for a long, long time. So I get immediate feedback provided to me that, oh, okay, well, editor, design, all these things have been shown. But as a screen reader user, none of that's actually happening for you because the software itself, think of it as a pinhole view. You're only seeing one piece at a time. So when you're on a button, when you're on an area, all that's being announced is just that area. Now, there are tools within ARIA to help with that. So focus management helps, ARIA Live helps, and some of these attributes like ARIA expanded. And what will happen is when you first land on that button and you click, you land on it, it'll say expanded, collapsed, one of those two options. Okay, I get immediate feedback on the area around me, even though I'm just only on one button. When you actually press it, you get immediate feedback. Because here's the trick about buttons and yeah, generally buttons for screen readers, is that as a sighted user, if you pressed on a link and nothing happened, how long would you wait? How long before you go, did it work? Is it thinking? Is there something wrong? That's pretty much what you actually have to deal with as a screen reader user on every single button, because you press it and nothing's announced. If you don't use the ARIA Live, if you don't do focus management, if you don't do these attributes like ARIA expanded, how long do I wait? Did it work? I don't know. So ARIA expanded gives that opportunity to immediately say expanded and let users know, oh, okay, this worked, and I can continue along in my traversal. ARIA labels. ARIA labels are great, and in the presentation so far, there's even been references to them, how to do it. just understand it's a double-edged sword. If you overwrite all of your links with, let's say, oh, I'm going to benefit people, and I'm going to say opens in a new window on every single link, and I'm going to do it as an ARIA label. Well, the danger of ARIA label is that it actually, all of its children inside that anchor, inside that button, are actually removed and not really accessible anymore. And only the label itself is going to be announced to screen reader users. So you pretty much negated any visual text, any information, and only supplied what's in that label. So if all you had was opens in a new window, you've just ended up in a site with a whole bunch of links that just say open in a new window, which is not helpful. So you have to front load and actually include all of that visual text for it to make sense. This also impacts voice dictation users. So like I talked about, LibServ, now the technology is changing. VoiceOver actually even puts in grid view options, so they can say like tap 10, and a lot of opportunities to not have to rely on the actual phrase of the button that you're interacting with, but there's plenty that do. And so if you overwrite the accessible name, there's large potential for voice users to not even be able to access those buttons. Another one, is ARIA current equals page true. I kind of point those out. So if we take a look at even W3C, to understand the reference, we always create cited aspects to say, okay, there's some visual indication of what page you're on, right? In navigation, sidebars, all these things, there's usually some class equals active and some background color. But screen reader users don't get provided that information. There's nothing visual for them. So that's where ARIA current equals page now will announce something for them. And pagination, maybe sometimes they're not always going to different pages. So then you also have ARIA current equals true to actually announce kind of, hey, this is the current one of this set. And something that I don't think a lot of devs realize is that CSS display properties actually impact the accessibility and the semantics of anything, really. I mean, it's kind of, if you think about it, display none makes it so screen readers and assistive technology, keyboard users, no one can access it. Well, it's already showing that display properties impact the semantics and the accessibility of HTML. And so I think even, Adrian also went over a nice little explanation. It's a good example of, okay, well, responsive tables, right? So if you do display block, display flex on a table, that loses all of its semantic value. So these are the common things that I started to see as I analyze sites, look through sites, and it's not exhaustive. There's plenty more out there. There's a lot of nuance here. So you kind of go, wait a second. He's pretty much spent the whole entire time saying there's lots of problems, there's lots of issues, and it's all on me, and I'm, scared and frightened about all this. But I'm actually not that pessimistic about this. I'm actually quite optimistic, because when I look at over the years that there were plenty of people announcing, making a voice, but probably in the past 5 years, I've only seen a huge increase in the number of voices, the number of devs, the number of companies that are waking up and realizing the accessibility needs. There's, if any time to jump into accessibility, now is a great time. And so that's why I kind of say the future still looks, it's very promising. We have so many voices out there, so many opportunities. Joe Dawson and the team putting together information, Gutenberg, all of these areas are still improving. And you can as well, and you can be part of that. So that's why I kind of say, devs unite, let's work together and create a better future. Let's get out of this, image of the dark tunnel and into the brighter future that we can help so many people with disabilities and improve life for everyone. All right. Questions?
All right. Thanks so much, Nick. I can really tell how passionate and, how much this is important to you. We do have some questions from the viewers out here. So we have about 15 minutes for the Q&A session.
Okay.
First question was, do you recommend a starter or accessibility ready theme?
All of them have really good points. I don't want to say like, oh, this has to be the one. It's still just, I would say, go through them, find ones that really align with you, because they have been vetted, they have been reviewed. Of course, there's always room for improvement for any of them, but the main pain point is, we've worked on many projects ourselves in WordPress, and a lot of times there is that page builder aspect where, there's even Genesis frameworks, aspects like that, where they still don't have the page builder that many clients at the end of the day want to say, I just want to drag and drop. I just want to put something in. And that's usually where the pain point starts to come out. So if you are just creating more of a simple site and you can just build it off of the basic WordPress setup, any of those accessibility themes are going to be beneficial to you. And I would say, take a look through those themes, find one that aligns with you, and that's probably a good starting point.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Next question is, why don't developers lock in required accessibility items within repository themes and plugins? For example, requiring alt text on all image or video content added, or color contrast, etc.
So this is where it gets tricky, because it's a two-way street, right? It's not just devs, it's also really site ownership. So content as a whole, you could say everything needs an alt text. But actually, it's not that simple, because there are times, so let's say it's all inside of an anchor, right? So you have images and text and a whole bunch of information all inside of an anchor tag. Well, if the image is, let's say it's a product, right? And you're buying men's gloves, let's say. And men's gloves, the picture is of men's gloves. Maybe you could get into some poetic way to describe them, but to a degree, most people end up just going, men's gloves. So in that anchor, now you've got alt text that says men's gloves, men's gloves. Well, it's men's gloves, and then the title of men's gloves that would be inside that same anchor. So in that case, you actually would want to say alt equals blank or null in a sense. And you would actually still want that attribute, but you don't actually want it to be explained. Videos, enforcing captions for everything is not that simple. And a lot of times, like let's say Netflix, for example, when having audio descriptions and captions, they went through some suits themselves. And, I think initially they're like, okay, we have audio descriptions for 2,000 videos. And you go, yeah, great. How many videos does Netflix have?
Right.
So enforcing it's tough, because content creators, would you want to say you can't launch because you don't have it done yet? Okay, well, how long will it take? Now, it should be built in, it should be best practices, but it's hard to enforce that because it's really on the content side. And there's sometimes nuances. So devs, it still would be great to enforce, but it still probably would be, you have to flag to say it's allowed. Because even WCAG spec says, if this is going to prevent a launch, that you don't have one video with closed captions, that's not a reason to stop. It's about a due diligence plan and working towards it. Now, I would of course say, yes, it'd be great to make sure everything has that. But we also have to be realists. And I know that's not great, but if you think about it, buildings, accessibility of a building, how often does it get renovated? Versus a website, when's the last time you updated a page? Probably maybe even since 8 a.m. today. Hopefully that helps answer.
Yeah, no, I think that was a great answer and a really great question. So thank you. Let's see, if there are additional questions, you can continue to put them in the chat. The next question for Nick is, can you suggest automated workflow tools for pre-flight accessibility checks? And are there any that you would recommend?
Okay, so you want to kind of have build tools to kind of run through and run against it, so that you could actually catch these issues before you actually even go live or go up into a production environment. And there's a lot out there, Axe and these other tools, you can actually build it in. There's a lot out there. They all have, the main thing I would say, I mentioned Pally as well, is if you wanted to kind of create dashboards and run through it and run them against builds. Again, it'll only help you catch so much. So the main thing I would stress is that it'll help you a little bit, but there's always going to be false positives. There's going to be aspects that are going to be missed. So it's at least steps you in the right direction. but it doesn't actually really solve everything. So that's where it's really important you look at your own code, review it, and make sure you know, just even run through it with the keyboard, run through it with a screen reader, run through it with these things, and help catch it before it even gets bypasses a build tool to then go to a live site.
Okay, great. I think, yes, diligence is key, testing is key, as you've mentioned. Okay, so we've got 2 more questions here. The next one is, how would you rank the page builders in relation to accessibility? Page builders always seem to be adding new features, but is one working faster or more diligently to make their product better in this area?
Yeah, I would say, you know, we've switched through a couple ourselves. Again, Beaver Builder still had some issues, and we kind of switched over, and we've been working a bit with Elementor, but we still have to hack around it, to be honest. It's really, if you know a system and you know the structure and you know the tools that are available, at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to, okay, well, if you're used to those, it's about making sure you have the JavaScript workarounds or the PHP workarounds or the customizations to fix it. So that's why I kind of say it's a lot of patchwork and a lot of fixing potholes. It's hard to say because I see times where they make improvements and then they regress. I see, advocacy, and then I see things sitting for a couple of years. Because all the people making it, right? How many people are involved? How much time does it take? I mean, if you look at it, Gutenberg ran into the same situation, right? They had to now go back through and start to fix and resolve items. And there's still going to be issues that come up once in a while. It's never one and done, unfortunately. So I don't want to be, oh, absolutely this one, because I haven't vetted every single one of them, because that would be a lot of time on myself as well. So there could be actually a really good one that caters to you because you know it so well.
Okay, great. Okay, we did get another question, so there's still 2 more questions. Where do you feel developers can make the most positive impact on accessibility? And then they, in parentheses, it says type of contribute, feature or area, etc.
That's a good one. Like I said, I think in one way, it is as developers, how can we contribute? The first thing is getting into another person's shoes, is to break outside of ourselves. The more all developers and all site owners pretty much said, I'm not going to just think about me. A lot of our design concepts and a lot of our development concepts, a lot of the things that we create, infinite scroll items, all of the concepts that we create, they go, wow, probably would have had some more thought into them on the impact that it is. So that's why I kind of say, the thing that I would stress is, if you haven't picked up any of these tools, any accessive technology, dive into it for a day. Close your eyes and just try and even use a normal site that you do every single day. And could you actually understand what it is? But if you were to contribute, right? Really, if you've gotten really good at accessibility and you know a fair amount and you want to be able to contribute, be another voice. By all means, if you found something, blog it, post it. For these open source tools, contribute, right? If they've got problems and you've been having to hack around it over and over and over again, well, here's the hack, or here's an approach to do it, and try and fork and try and actually do pull requests.
Okay, great. And I think that's very much in the spirit of WordPress Accessibility Day, having so many experts together. So the last question is, I guess, more of a personal one.
Okay.
The comment is, I love your approach on testing. So what drew you to accessibility, and who has influenced you?
Yeah, no, it's a lot of people have close family, they themselves have issues that they're dealing with. Mine's not as fanciful, but it's really just, I think maybe being abroad, maybe living abroad teaches you, it's just like, again, break outside of your mold and break outside of yourself and start to empathize with others. And so, yeah, did I make mistakes early on? Oh, absolutely. I made some bad code decisions. I thought, oh, this is cool. But when I started to realize the impact it really started to get to me, kind of go like, well, a lot of these principles are just basics. We've lost sight of the basics. You know, accessibility principles for the web have been around for 20 plus years. And somewhere along the lines, we wanted to get cooler and cooler and cooler. And it's not that you can't be cool. You can create really interesting interfaces, but you just have to remember the basics. The amount of times that I don't see a button, you know, again, all these JavaScript frameworks, it's not that the JavaScript framework is bad as a whole, you know, React, Angular, all of them. It's that the people doing it don't remember the basics. And so I guess that just deeply influenced me, where it's like, oh, I can actually make a difference. And then the benefits, right? Plenty of presenters so far have gone over SEO, user experience as a whole. There's a lot of alignment. So when I first started on really diving in, I started, you know, people would always ask, it's like, you know, devil's advocate, why focus on accessibility? And I could hear people presenting and they're like, cause you should.
Right.
And it's like, well, yeah, but I think, you know, that's not always so realistic. It's kind of sad in some ways that, you know, you would think it should be that easy. So it got me really passionate and kind of going like, how can I express this to people so organizations, clients can finally realize the benefits? And so generally, if you need to express something, you know, get buy-in within your companies or client or something, is I always go with the selfish method. You know, it's, if you just scare them with legal, they'll do just enough ounces of flair to get along, get by. It's, hey, did you know that you'd get benefits of SEO? And they'd be like, ooh, SEO, that's much more important. If you kind of point out, you know, oh, okay, well, you know, the amount of people with disabilities that you could increase, right? An e-com site, you could increase up to 20% the amount of users. Banks, hey, stop thinking of it as individual. You know, you always talk about wanting to be individuals, wanting to be, you know, about the people. Well, you can create marketing campaigns about how you're about the people and you worked hard to make the accessibility. So that usually then gets the buy-in to then finally do the thing that I wanted to do all along, which is make sure the sites are accessible.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. And for everyone that asked questions, thank you. Those were great questions. Nick, it's been a pleasure having you. And again, thanks everyone for attending this session, Developers Unite, Navigating Accessibility in WordPress.